So, what's like the most aggressive no you've worked around?
It's a great question.
Where you had to get it. You're like, I'm not leaving. Or hanging up the phone.
That's fine. Probably Cubs Convention 2019. It was my first and only Cubs convention I've ever attended. Couldn't go as a kid because it was too expensive, and the tickets sell out in like 10 minutes. Cubs convention at the Grand Sheraton downtown Chicago. I mean, it's a convention center of Cubs fans. It's nuts.
Yeah.
But I was allowed, along with my boss in South Bend at the time, Chris Hagstrom, we were allowed in the media workroom before the grand introductions of Cubs convention. And there you can pull some players, you can interview them. So you guys might remember I talked to David Bodie and Ian Happ, a few other guys.
Yeah.
I asked for Cole Hamels. And the first reaction I got was, he's tough to find. As Cole, at that time, was only in his second year as a Cub. He wasn't part of that Bryant, Rizzo, Lester group that had been around for a while. So Hamels, he had not talked a lot at the time, but I grew up loving Cole Hamels. 2008 World Series MVP with the Phillies, guy that I always loved watching. So went up to the Cubs guy, said, hey, would I be able to talk to Cole Hamels? Because I can't guarantee it. You'll have to find him yourself. Done. So I'm kind of finagling my way around this. It was like a event center, and there were a ton of Cubs players and personalities and team staff just drinking. There were 2 open bars before they went out for the introductions, and I saw a really tall guy, ended up being Cole Hamels, and drink in hand, he's talking to a couple of people. I waited literally 15 minutes for him to finish up a conversation.
Yeah.
I took my chance, went up to him and said, hey, Cole, you available for a couple minutes? He goes, sure, let's go.
Nice.
So that was cool.
Patience.
That was my favorite interview I've ever done.
Really?
It was a joy.
What about, besides the fact you grew up loving him so much, is there anything specifically about the interview that made it so memorable?
He was just very personable. He actually threw a no-hitter at Wrigley as a member of the Phillies. In one of his final starts as a Philly, he threw a no-hitter against the Cubs at Wrigley, and then ends up coming to the Cubs a year and a half later.
Yeah.
So I asked him what he remembered most about that day, and quite frankly, athletes a lot of times, they'll give you a 30-second, 40-second answer, but he goes off on a 2-minute tangent about what it meant to him. His wife was in the ballpark that day, and what was so special about that no-hitter was the Cubs fans. There were 40,000 people at Wrigley that day, and it was so weird because the Cubs had not been no-hit since the 1960s. It was the first no-hitter thrown against the Cubs since the 60s.
Damn.
Home or away. Since Sandy Koufax, actually. Wow. And people in Wrigley, Cubs fans included, were standing and cheering for him to do it against the Cubs.
Damn.
In Wrigley.
Just to see it happen.
Just to see it happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably the most memorable interview I've ever done.
Good, man.
Dang. And it was probably nice it was a more casual setting.
Yeah.
It's
so lax.
He wasn't, in the media room or, in the locker room still trying to just go take a shower. How do you think that played into the interview? The whole vibe of it, how it felt?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pull up a picture. It was awesome. He was very nice. He was polite. He answered every question with thought and care. He never bypassed a question. Right now he's at 2,500 strikeouts right now, and 3,000 strikeouts is the big benchmark for a pitcher.
Okay.
For a pitcher, usually, if you want to get into the Hall of Fame, you either need 300 wins or you need 3,000 strikeouts.
Okay.
And he's at about 2,500 strikeouts right now. So that was the last thing I asked him. Was as a pitcher who has had a Hall of Fame pedigree, he's a World Series MVP. He's one of the most dominant lefties of the early 2010s. He's kind of on the borderline for the Hall of Fame. I asked him, is 3,000 strikeouts, is that something that's on your mind? And he started naming off pitchers that he remembers with 3,000 strikeouts that he has enjoyed watching through his career. So, I mean, it was just a cool night.
Oh, yeah, I remember this picture.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
that's
fantastic.
Great. Yeah. So, had a great time. I mean, guy's styling. So, you got to be on your game.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to use that.
Yeah. That's great.
That's awesome, though. Just, I thought I was a good finagler, and DK's just sharing insight on, I'm just a rookie.
Yeah.
Well,
He's tiptoeing in those Jordans just into these interviews.
sometimes you need it, man. I mean, like I did, like for example, a couple months ago, like Barstool approached 1070 and was like, "Hey, we got Dave Portnoy available if somebody wants to talk to him," and
Yeah, I heard they
bounced right over that, man.
passed it on. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was thankfully it was a blessing to even be asked to do it. But at the time, Dave was pushing Barstool Sportsbook, and Dan Dockich already advertises for DraftKings.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy in the station already advertises for FanDuel, and then there are a couple other guys that do FanDuel, and nobody at the time was advertising for Barstool Sportsbook. And myself, I don't advertise for any particular sportsbook. I bet,
Yeah.
but I don't advertise for anybody.
Right.
So they passed it along to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so you gotta get lucky sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, now that we're on the topic of your show, do you maybe want to explain a little bit more about, I mean, obviously you said when you first came to 1075, you were able to write, you were able to cover sports, but yeah, I was going to ask, like, have you, this summer, now that the NCAA tournament's done, has that been able to give you a lot of time for your show? Do you want to explain more about the goal and the vision of your podcast show and what that's kind of done for you?
Yeah, I mean, Timmy, I started the podcast. It's called The Brendan King Show, Spotify and Apple, anywhere podcast, really. I started it because I wanted more reps as a sports radio host.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know in the future, someday, there might be an opportunity to do both play-by-play and a full-time sports radio show.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with how the road is going, I mean, I didn't expect to be back here for an entire year's time, which I'm not complaining about at all. It's just a little unexpected. So I started the podcast with the help of our good buddy Brian Todd, just to get on-air reps and to practice as a sports radio host, because it really, being a sports radio host, even more than play-by-play, it takes like a special set of skills to be able to go off on like a 15-minute tangent and convince somebody of your opinion. I mean, you guys know that. So being a sports radio host is really difficult, because at least play-by-play, in play-by-play, you're describing what's in front of you. Play-by-play is the easiest thing in the world. If you're good at it, the story's in front of you.
Yeah.
When you're doing sports radio, you're looking at a wall, and it's up to you to really create everything.
The writing.
Right. The writing, yeah. So I wanted more reps as a sports radio host, and then we just started getting some cool guests. I mean, the coaches thing was very lucky, but I think every school that had their coach come on, I mean, we had some great conversations. I mean, Bryce Drew came on from Grand Canyon.
It's great.
Obviously, you
He's
know
a
him
legend.
well, regional
Yeah.
legend.
Colorado Crusaders.
Yeah, Holtman was on. Josh Pastner from Georgia Tech. I mean, I can go on. So that was awesome. The Portnoy thing. Sean Avery, who is one of the biggest bad boys in the history of NHL, in the history of the NHL. He's now an actor. He was in Christopher Nolan's movie Tenet.
Oh, dang. I saw it. I had no clue what happened.
Oh, I still can't tell you.
I need to watch it again. But I had no idea. It looked badass, but I have no clue what was going on.
Couldn't tell you. And actually, Sean Avery, who again, he played for the New York Rangers and the Dallas Stars and the Los Angeles Kings, is one of the most famous enforcers in NHL history, and he's hilarious.
Okay.
But I asked him to come on, and he did, which was cool, but I asked him about Tenet, and when they filmed it, he didn't know what the movie was about after they filmed
I
it.
saw that clip. That was awesome.
He didn't know what the movie was about. Because they filmed it in a way, Nolan filmed it in a way, I guess, where they did not film it in chronological order. They filmed scenes just based off who they had at the time and where they were, because they filmed it in different sections of the world. So Robert Pattinson didn't know what the damn movie was about. They just were saying lines.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I guess to answer your question in full, I wanted more reps as an on-air host. It's a great opportunity. The vision with the show, if people enjoy listening to it, that's the cherry on top, honestly, because I enjoy doing it. If people want to listen, that's just means the world to me. And I'm just going to give my opinion on sports, talk about sports, hopefully bring on some cool guests. And again, if people want to listen and people enjoy it, that's even better.
Mm-hmm.